Hi, this is Susan, and I'm together with John Durant, and we are both doing the small group with the parents from session 4. Wanted to let you know that in session 3, the small group with the parents, page 127 was missing from our manual, so we were not able to finish that off the way we would have liked. Also, in this session, we are going to start with number 2, because number 1 is for a weekly session, and we're doing the weekend session. Okay. So parents, let me ask you, what do you think is the most important factor that protects teenagers from risk-taking behavior? Do you have any idea?
Just having parents that kind of know what the kids are doing.
Right, it's parents that are remaining involved in the kids' lives. Parent-child connectedness is the single most important factor in preventing kids from taking risk-taking behavior. And that may be surprising to some of you, but actually that's the truth. Now, I want to ask you something. You're going to need to do a little bit of thinking. What kind of words do you think your teens would use to describe the kind of parent with whom they would actually feel connected? What kind of words?
Someone who listens to them, not just someone who talks at them.
Someone who listens, okay.
Someone who's caring, approachable.
Caring, approachable. What about, do kids like parents who lecture?
No,
Okay.
They don't like. But maybe ask them the right questions so that they kind of get an idea of what you want them to do, but you're not exactly saying it to them. So.
Right. You have to be very tactful and skillful in how you go about giving your kids, quote unquote, advice. That's very important. Okay, so if we wanted to list some of these words, we would say that they were warm, maybe. They want to have a warm parent, a caring parent, a parent who's, we didn't actually say this, but I think they wanted to have a parent who's approachable and accessible. It's hard to talk to a parent who's not there, right? So warm, caring.
I'll write those down. You can.
Great.
Okay.
Caring, approachable, and accessible. This would mean also a parent who can be trusted, that won't reveal secrets, that will truly listen and offer guidance. Okay, so these would be the very important characteristics of what you want to be as a parent in order to remain connected to your child. So in this session, we're actually going to be talking about the beliefs and values that you have as a parent that you want to make sure your child gets. You want to make sure that those are passed on to your child. And particularly, those beliefs and values that you hold that relate to sex, marriage, and the family. We also want to just kind of see how well you're doing in talking with your child about sex, and then look at some of the protective factors in your child's life and try to make a plan for really strengthening those. Now, right now, in the small groups that your teens are in, they're playing a game that's called Risky Squares. And in this game, they're actually writing their goals and dreams for their future on a card. And they're trying to think about these goals in terms of what's going to make them happy, healthy, and holy, which is very important. And so they're going to draw a risky square, piece of paper, right, out of a container. And then it's going to say like an unchaste or a risky behavior on it that has a certain consequence. So for example, they may get a risky square that says unplanned pregnancy or AIDS, okay? And then they're also going to get a chance at getting a paper that would also say yes to living chaste. I said yes to living chaste. And then they're going to look at those papers and they're going to try to assimilate how the paper that they draw will affect their future life. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that when you go back and you meet with your teens again, that you make that time to discuss with them what they wrote on their card and which risky square they drew, and kind of what they thought about it, what they decided about it. Very important. Okay, so we want to talk first about sex marriage, and family. And to do that, we're going to use this chart here. And want to ask you just a few questions and try to get some answers from you. What kind of things did you learn in your family of origin about sex, marriage, and the family? Okay, we're going to pass out some cards for you so that you can write those down, and then we're going to kind of collect them and see what sort of answers we get.
Okay, I know for me when it came to sex, as far as what my mom and dad said, I think it was like a 5-minute conversation altogether. So it wasn't anything that was like really planned, and I knew that my parents were kind of nervous about it. But more than anything, it was just don't do it. That it's not right to do.
So just don't do it.
Yeah, and it was more because of fear. You know, fear that I would get someone pregnant, or fear that I would ruin my life. So
Okay.
yeah.
So would you say that those were like positive or negative sorts of messages?
Negative.
Okay,
Yeah.
negative messages, all
Yeah.
right. What about for marriage? What kinds of things did they tell you?
The one thing, I mean, my parents are still together, and there was never any talk about divorce. They fought, but they always found a way to make things work. And I think my mom, more than my dad too, just always had a way of diffusing conflict, and she was really good about that. But I did see how they had different gifts, and but I did see the warts and all as well.
Okay, so maybe we can write that down under marriage, is that they had very good conflict resolution skills?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's very important, extremely important in marriage. How about in terms of family? What kinds of things did you learn in your family of origin?
Okay, again, it seemed like my mom held the family together. She always made it a point to have dinners together and always talked with us. But my dad worked a lot, but whenever he did have free time, I mean, anytime we had a baseball game or basketball game or any free time, he always seemed to be there as well. And I guess looking back as an adult now, I just have so much more respect for that, because I know how difficult it is to carve out the time. But they found a way, and we had a lot of family vacations as well.
Okay, so
So-
maybe time is
Yeah.
very important to spend time with your family.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example, and very, very critical, I think. Lots of times you hear people say, oh, it's not the quantity of time that you spend with your kids, it's quality. And actually research has found out that that's just not true. That it has much more to do with the amount of time that we spend with our families that's meaningful, rather than the quality. Not that both aren't necessary, because they are. Okay, so what I want to ask our parents now is to pass in some of the index cards that you filled out. We're going to take a look at some of these obstacles that some of these qualities that you found that were important to teach your children about, your values, what you want to pass on to them in terms of sex, marriage, and family. So if you're just going to pass those in, we can ask you for an example. If you want to share some of those with us, that would be great. Okay, we'll collect those.
Okay, I know when it comes to sex, we already mentioned about how it seemed like it was a negative message. I'd like it to be something positive.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what the church teaches, but I know that there's got to be something better than what I learned myself. So just a positive way of giving them some motivation to postpone sex.
Right, indeed the church's message is very positive about sex. So you want to change that from being a fearful thing to being a positive, a plus, something, sex is a good instead of something to be feared. Okay, and then how about, what about in the marital realm? I mean, certainly what your parents taught you was very good, but
Yeah.
what do you want to pass on to your kids?
I liked what we did in the last session about complementary, and just letting the kids know that neither parent's going to be perfect, but together the parents can pass on those gifts to their kids, and that as they're searching for a spouse, they're looking for someone that to some extent is going to complete their life. Not fully like God, but someone that just makes them feel more complete when they're around them.
Okay, so that feeling of complementarity, make sure that they find someone that matches them, that's a good match for them. Like emotionally, psychologically, spiritually.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
spice thing.
Yeah, that's good. Very important too. Along with the solving conflict, very important. Okay, how about in terms of family? What do you want to pass on to your children? How are what are those qualities?
I think, especially time, it just seems like when I was growing up, it was so much easier to have time, but now it seems like there's 500 different athletic events for them to be involved in, and everybody has, from first grade on, it seems like they've got a path of what they're going to do with their the free time they have. There's more homework, but then there's also just so much media, computers and
Right.
cell phones, and it's just hard to carve time out as a
So there's a
family.
lot of competition. There's a lot of competition for time. So maybe you want to teach your kids passing on the priority that family is one of those things that should come first. So you're going to prioritize family time.
Definitely.
Okay, great. Yeah, and you know what? I would have to say that this is a real good way. This family honor is an excellent way to do that. To make the time for this, because this is a very important thing for the family. So this whole program is a good example. Okay, now we want to talk a little bit about what makes it hard for you to do these things. What are the obstacles for you to keep you from passing on your values about sex, about marriage, and about family? So let's go backwards. Let's take a look at family first. What makes it difficult for you to pass your values onto your children in terms of family?
Just the lack of time and just all the different activities that the kids are involved in. It's just hard to have everybody focused on making it a priority with all the different things that are out there for kids these days.
Okay, so you know what? We see time again there. We saw time in terms of the family of origin, taught that time was very important, and the values that, John wants to pass on to his family as the importance of time. And again, what makes it difficult? Time. Time. So we know that that's going to be a very important factor in this passing on of values. How about for marriage? What makes it difficult for you to pass on those values?
Well, it just seems like there's a confusion on what marriage is. In fact, when we were coming to church tonight, we saw a bumper sticker that had little icons of a man and a woman equals a man and a man equals a woman and a woman, just saying how all of those are equal in terms of their values. So it just seems like it's an uphill battle trying to convince our kids that marriage is between a man and a woman.
So some of these cultural factors that go into it, societal, media, cultural factors. Yeah, it does make it difficult. That's a very good example. And then let's take a look at sex. What makes it hard to pass on your values to your children about sex?
I think it's the same thing with cultural media. My son, he's in 9th grade, and he says that a lot of his kids have the smartphones and they can look up porn in the classroom. And it's like, it's 2 seconds and it's right there in front of them. And it was bad when we were young. I mean, kids brought Playboys and all that kind of stuff in, but it was always kind of scary because you knew you'd get caught. But now it's like, you don't even know what the kids are doing and it's just right there.
So what I hear you saying is the media.
Yeah.
The media it makes it very difficult. So regardless of whether that's television, but especially the iPods, the iPads, the iPhones, so some of these things can present real obstacles. Good. Those are all excellent examples. So, I want to kind of hone in on this one, on sex, and just kind of ask the parents here today, why is it that we as a culture find it so difficult to talk about sex with our children? Why is that so difficult for us? What are some of your opinions on it?
I guess I just never felt like I had the right tools, that it's like I was always on my own and didn't have anything good that would help me to have that discussion. I'm kind of embarrassed about it because, I've made mistakes myself. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'd be a hypocrite if I'd say this is what you should be doing when I didn't exactly follow that advice growing up.
Okay, so...
And I think that sometimes whatever I do share, it's going to lead to some pretty embarrassing questions that they could ask me.
Right, I think that's a very good point. We do fear those embarrassing questions. And if our children ask us questions, we want to be able to answer them and answer them truthfully. And so I think that's a good reason why that might cause us some apprehension. I think also it's difficult to talk with our kids about sex simply because of some of the factors we've mentioned here. Time makes it difficult. Also, we're fighting many battles on many fronts with our culture and with our media. That certainly makes it difficult. The fact that the role models that our kids have are very inconsistent sometimes with our values as parents. And that we really have inner doubts sometimes about our own ability, our own competence to talk with our kids about sex. And so this is where we really need to focus, I think, in our communications with our teens about that. So let's take a look at page 25 in the parent booklet now, which is going to speak a little bit to our own self-assessment of how we're doing with our children in talking about sex. So I want you to take a few minutes now, parents, and look through that and mark these as you think are fitting for your circumstance with your teen. Okay? Everybody get a chance to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, let's take a look here. Why don't we sort of see how you did, and as I'm going over these points, just kind of look at how you did on your survey, and let's talk about it just a little bit. Number one, I really listen and value their opinions and attitudes. Like in session 1, you remember that we talked about how we need to develop that skill of search talk, that skill of active listening to our teens. So, if you rated yourself kind of low in that, that you feel that you don't do a real good job with that, you really want to focus on that now, okay, because you know that that's an important skill. The second question, I bring up sexual issues or areas of concern. How did you feel like that's an area, parents, that you did well at or that you need improvement at? Just kind of look at that, and I would just encourage you again, if you have a hard time bringing up the issues, lots of things in your environment can act as springboards for you communicating with your children. A billboard that you might see, or something in a magazine, a TV show that you see, might give you an opportunity to point out or inculcate some of your beliefs and values with your teen, whereas it might be very difficult to you bring it up on your own. Some of these situations might allow you to. Question number 3 is, I share clearly my beliefs about sexual issues. Well, believe it or not, our kids really do want to hear our values and beliefs on sexual issues. We may not think that, so we may hold back. But really, remember what we said about our children needing strong role models and strong examples and needing that guidance, needing those boundaries. Our kids do want to hear from us, and so we must voice our own beliefs and feelings about sexual issues. Now, they may blow you off, or it may appear that they are. I know we've all seen that. You think they're not listening to me, but they are. It sticks. How about the next question here? I am open and inviting when it comes to talking about difficult sexual issues. If you rated yourself kind of, iffy on that one, maybe on the lower scale, you have to ask yourself, if I'm really unskilled in this area, maybe I need to practice with somebody. Now this may sound strange to you, but really it is a good technique. You can practice with your spouse, you could practice with some of your acquaintances, some of your friends, maybe some of your friends that also have teenagers. This would be a good opportunity for you to practice. And if you think that it's difficult for you to broach these subjects with your teen, admit that you're human, that you don't know everything. Come out and say, honey, when I was your age, I didn't have anybody to talk to me about these things. So, it may be a little difficult, but I really think it's important that we talk about this. Let them know that it's difficult for you. They'll understand. They really will. Next question is, I'm honest, open, and appropriate. Okay, so what this is really asking is, do you have the kind of relationship with your teen that you can say, when I was your age, I did A, B, and C, and I regretted it, and this is why. Or when I was your age, I did D, E, or F, and it was the best thing I ever did. Do you have that kind of relationship that you can express those to your children? If you don't, then you need to start working on techniques that will allow you to develop that relationship. And remember, it is never too late, and especially with kids who are in 7th and 8th grade, you still have time, okay? And then the next one, I do not jump to conclusions about my teen's behavior because of the questions or issues raised. Like if they ask you a question about sex, do you automatically think, uh-oh, does that mean that they're having sex? You have to fight that tendency, okay? I think we all have that tendency, but we have to fight it. Remember, teens need to be able to come to us for information, so we have to remain open. Next question is, I back up my beliefs, my opinions, and attitudes with carefully thought out and researched facts and others' insights, okay? Again, we all know that the old story of, well, when I was a kid, I used to walk 10 miles to school uphill in the snow and bare feet. That doesn't go very far with our children, okay? We need to have well thought out, carefully backed up information that we can give them, so that they in turn can internalize that and use that with their peers to be able to express themselves and to use those with some of those techniques, stay strong techniques that we talked about earlier. The next one, I show respect for my child's free will, and I recognize that I can't force my teen to believe or think as I do. This is so hard, because we always have to remember in our minds, in our focus, we have to keep in focus, this is not me. This is my child, and this is a different individual with his or her own beliefs, his or her own thoughts, his or her own ways of behaving. And we can never, ever control another human being. We accomplish a lot more with love, patience, compassion, and understanding than we do by forcing. And so this never makes sense, to try to force your will on your child. It has to come through love and compassion. So parents, I want you to take a look back at these suggestions that we've had here, and I want you again to put a little star by one of these tips that you would like to improve on. And then I want to encourage you to come back to this rating scale from time to time, just as a self-check, to see how you do, okay? You should note improvement in yourself if you're really trying. And now John's going to go on and talk about the protective factors in a child's life.
Okay, if you guys can turn to page 26 in your book, Protective Factors in My Child's Life. And I would like you to take a couple minutes to rate each item on the scale, 1, 2, or 3, with 3 being the strongest, 2 being okay, and 1 being needs improvement. So looking at number 1, my son or daughter feels loved and wanted by mother or father in the family. So if you feel like that's a strength in your family, you'd put a 3. If you feel that you need improvement, you'd put a 1. So just to do that same thing for each of the 20 items. So I'll give you a couple minutes to go through that. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, what I'd like you to do is go through some of the ones that you put a 3 next to, and star the ones that seem to be a major strength for you and your family. And then I'd also like you to look at some of the 1s or 2s, some of the lower scores, and circle 3 of the ones that are the lowest that you would like some insight into, maybe some things that you could do differently to turn that into a strength. So take a couple minutes to do those 2 things. Circles for the things that you feel like you need to improve, and stars for those things that you feel like you're already doing a good job.
Okay, well I would say that probably one where I think I do a good job, and it's just really by the grace of God that I do, because you know, I know about family honor, is that says that I am number 10, that my sons have a parent who really expresses my sexuality in a positive way, and I live the virtue of chastity. Now I live that as a married person, but I think that that would be a real strength that I have. Yeah, I think 11 right underneath that is probably an area I can really improve in, because life is busy, and you know, I'm working and I'm involved in outside activities, and my son has a very hectic schedule, and sometimes I find that our conversations, I can't even remember what he said. You know, and this is very dangerous, and I realize it, so that's an area I've got to improve in.
Yeah, and that kind of gets back to our little chart up here about time constraints. And so many times it's hard to just clear your mind and be present for your kids because you're always thinking about what's next on your list of things to do. And it is very important to have that positive message. We've talked about how in a lot of family of origins that it was more a fear message or saying no, but understanding the difference between abstinence and chastity can be a crucial distinction for kids to understand. Okay, what are a couple more strengths and weaknesses? And I guess as we're doing this, the goal is that we are here as a community and we can learn from other people what they've done to overcome some of those problems and make those weaknesses into strengths, and also share some of our frustrations and concerns and see what kind of feedback we can get from one another. So again, what's another strength that you guys feel like you have?
Well, I think that one of the things that I try to do regularly is I subscribe to the Vatican Information Service, and every day I get an email that tells me what the Pope has done or what's going on in Rome. And I think for Catholics this is very valuable because lots of times there's lots of information in there about youth ministry and youth activities that go on. Like when we just had World Youth Day, I was able to tell my son every day something that was going on, something positive with youth ministry, and many of the messages were about chastity, so I think that was very helpful.
And you don't feel like you're just bringing them up out of nowhere. Sometimes it's nice to have something that is in the media and you can refer to it. And we've had such wonderful popes over the last 20 or 30 years, so they're very vibrant and exciting messages, and they've got a real relationship with the kids, especially at World Youth Day. Okay, what's another one that maybe you have some difficulties with?
Well, what I often have difficulties with is when my sons maybe have friends who are engaging in behaviors that are not very good or may be having some problematic areas in their lives. I want to be able to tell my children that, wow, I just don't think that's a good thing that guy is doing or that your friend's doing. And it's hard to do that because sometimes when I criticize the friend, my child takes it personally. And they'll defend the friend, even though they know that what the friend is engaged in may not be the best thing. I find that very difficult. I'm still looking for a good way to approach that.
Yeah. Well, any parents have any ideas how that should be handled? Well, I know personally, myself, I've got my son, again, I mentioned that pornography situation, and he's got one friend that's into that big time, and he used to be really good friends with him, and it's gotten to the point where he basically had to decide on whether or not he was going to be friends with him because it was just too hard for my own son to remain strong around him. And I guess that's where we're eventually, maybe as an adult he would be able to do that, maybe he had enough self-control, but as we talk through it ourselves, we just realized that at this point in his life it was too much of a temptation, and that he had to just cut that relationship for now. And I think every kid is different, and I think just having that discussion with your kid and just asking them what they think is a good plan, because sometimes they don't think through those steps, so that can be pretty important. Okay. Anyone else want to share what they would do to overcome that situation? Okay. Well, we'll move on. Any more strengths? Let's look at one more strength here.
Well, I think just being involved in a church, I think is a real strength, because that's a counteracting thing to the media, because you want them to be around people that have like values. Maybe it's not all coming from you, that you want them to be around other people that share values. It's kind of like more role models, more reinforcement. So I think that's a strength.
Yeah, our daughter's been really active in a youth group, and at one point they asked me if I wanted to be on the leadership team, and at first I was, but then I saw that she really didn't like having me around, and that it was nice to just kind of back off and let her have her own space. And she met some absolutely wonderful young adults who were in college that she really looks up to, and a lot of times they're saying the exact same thing as I do, but they're cool, and they are kind of a lot closer to her reality, and she's been able to connect with them in a way that I would have a hard time doing. So yeah, church is very important.
That's very good.
Okay, so at this point, one thing that you can do is kind of look at those weaknesses, and we've kind of shared with you a couple of those, how you might be able to overcome those. But take this home and spend a little bit more time yourself and just kind of brainstorm some things that you could do to overcome those weaknesses and to continue to offer those strengths. And as we're ending here, there's an additional guide that's very helpful. It's for parents only, teens and sex, who has the most influence. And it should really reassure you that even if you don't have all the answers, if you open up this little brochure, you can see just being able to connect with your child, to communicate, and be sort of a co-pilot in their life so that they feel that they're not in it alone, can make a major difference. So hopefully this has been a very informative way for you to see that there's other parents that care just as much about their kids as you do. And don't let these this informal gathering of parents be the last time. I mean, we have a list of phone numbers and email addresses, and it's not every day that you meet parents who are as committed as you, to helping your children. So this should be something that we can continue to gain insight and wisdom from one another. Okay? And I really would like to do that. I would like to have like kind of a follow-up event after
That's
this,
an excellent
because the regular one is it's 4